Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Junhan. I'm from JMSC School of Future Media. In the study I'm going to share with you today is a recent study I've done with my colleagues from University of Maryland and University of Connecticut. So the title is pretty long, but essentially we are looking at how online comments influence our attitudes toward certain health issue. And in this context is sunscreen use. And we look at several nuances and mechanisms there. Okay, so a little bit background information. So social media has become a primary source for health information for many people nowadays. And when we use social media to look for health information, we do not just look at the social media posts. We also sometimes scroll down to look at the comments. Okay, let's see what other people think about this health issue. So some theories like exemplification theory and social norm theory tell us that, okay, those comments, we try to use those comments as examples that represent what other people think about this issue. And we perceive the social norms from reading those comments. And our perception of those social norms can influence our own attitudes toward this health issue. And empirical studies also support this. In a meta-analysis I conducted with my colleague about 2 years ago, we found that comment valence, which is whether the comment is supportive of a health behavior or against a health behavior, it can influence several outcomes like message evaluation, our attitudes, beliefs, and behavioral intentions toward this health behavior. So online comments is pretty impactful in this sense. But very interestingly, from this meta-analysis, we also found that the effect of online comments is there is a big variance across those empirical studies. So some studies found like very strong effect, like 0.72 in R, and some studies found a no effect or even significant negative effect of online comments impact. So why is such inconsistent findings? So this intrigued us to go on next step to conduct this study. So we want to look at why there is inconsistent effect of online comments in those empirical studies. And in this specific project, we argued that it may be because of two reasons. One reason is people's visual attention. So when we use social media, when we look at online comments, do we really pay attention to all the comments? Maybe not, right? We have very limited cognitive capacity and there are so much information online. So we may only be selectively pay attention to certain types of comments. But the phenomenon of selective exposure, selective attention was not very well studied in previous literature. And this may explain why online comments sometimes affect our attitude, sometimes it's not effective. And this is the first reason we want to explore. And the second reason we want to explore in this study is the nuance of social norms. So the series tells us, okay, online comments influence our attitudes through changing our perception of social norms. But there are different types of social norms, right? The perception of social norms can be about general social media users, people I don't know, just online. Users. And it can be about people in our more closer social network, like people like me, people similar to me, people who are important to me, people I know. So which kind of norm do online comments really change? And how that influences our attitudes. So this mechanism may also shape the impact of online comments on our attitudes. So in our study, we first try to use eye tracking to capture people's attention towards certain types of online comments. And we also measure different types of social norms and see how different norms mediate the impact of online comments on our attitudes. So this leads to our research questions and hypotheses. So our first research question is about selective exposure. We ask how do prior attitude and behavior affect visual attention to pro-sunscreen versus anti-sunscreen comments. So this is based on two previous theories about motivated reasoning and selective exposure, self and affect management model. So those two models explains what kind of motivations drive people's selective exposure to media content. So like the directional goal and the self-consistency and self-enhancement motivation, so those motivation tend to make people pay more attention to information align their pre-existing attitudes and behavior. But for accuracy goal and self-improvement motivation, those motivation tend to drive people to pay more attention to counter information, so we can make a more accurate judgment on certain issues. So here we ask a research question because multiple motivations can play a role in health context. And then our second set of hypotheses is about the mediation role of perceived norms. So here we look at two types of social norms. One is perceived norm of general social media users, and the second is perceived norms of more closer social network. And here we hypothesize that attention to certain types of online comments can influence our attitudes via changing the two types of norms. Okay, so here is our study design. We conducted an experiment. So in this experiment, we simulated a YouTube page. And on the left-hand side, the participants watch a YouTube video about sunscreen. And on the right-hand side is the comment area. So we simulated live comments. So the comments scroll from the bottom to the top. There are two experiment conditions. In one condition, most of the comments are pro-sunscreen comments, and in another condition, most of the comments are anti-sunscreen comments. So we use ad tracking to capture people's visual attention, and we also ask people to self-report their subjective attention to the comments area, and also we measure perceived norms and attitudes towards sunscreen use afterwards. The sample size is 177, almost evenly assigned to the two conditions. Well, so what we found, the first set of finding is about selective attention. So we found that selective attention is real, it really exists, and the pattern is complex. So the pattern is different for prior attitude and prior behavior if we consider the two different moderators. So let's look at the prior attitude as a moderator first. So we found that people with more positive prior attitude towards sunscreen use, they tend to pay more attention to pro-sunscreen comments. But the prior attitude didn't have much effect on their attention to anti-sunscreen comment. So it partially shows confirmation bias. And then if we look at prior behavior as a moderator, we found that people with more frequent sunscreen use, they tend to pay more attention to anti-sunscreen comments, the opposite way. And prior behavior didn't have much impact on attention to pro-sunscreen comments. So the pattern is different across the two moderators, and also those patterns exist when we use eye tracking measured attention. And if we use self-reported attention, those patterns just disappear. Okay, so how do we interpret this finding? So when we look at prior attitude effect, it suggests partially confirmation bias. So it tells us people rarely seek information that aligns with their existing beliefs. But when we look at prior behavior effect, it kind of suggests an accuracy goal or curiosity as a motivation. So individuals are drawn to information that challenges their prior behavior. So probably I have been using sunscreen for a very long time, and I don't know, I was not exposed to any information that are against the sunscreen, but I saw something online, I will say, okay, wait, let me check on that. Is my behavior really wrong? I have been doing this for a very long time. So I may be driven by accuracy goal. I want to make an accurate judgment about my health behavior. And also methodological takeaway from this specific finding is that self-reports is actually maybe a poor proxy for actual attention because we cannot capture the nuanced selective exposure pattern with self-reporting measure. So the first set of finding about selective exposure, and then the second set of finding is about the norm-mediated pathways, the hypothesis. So the pattern is also interesting. It's different across the two conditions. So in pro-sunscreen comments condition, we found that people's attention to pro-sunscreen comments, it can shape their perception of closed network norm, but it didn't shape their perception of general social media norm. And in anti-sunscreen comment condition, people's attention to anti-sunscreen comments, it can change their perception of general social media users norm, but it didn't shape their perception of their closed social network norm. And across the two conditions, the perception of closed network norm, the bottom one, are a strong predictor of our attitudes towards sunscreen use. But the more distal social media user norm, it didn't predict our attitudes. Well, so why there are two different normative pathways? So for pro-sunscreen, this condition, this pattern is, we believe is mostly because of the nature of our sample. Because after we collect our data, we found that most people in our sample, they had a pretty strong pro-sunscreen attitudes before entering this study. So when they see pro-sunscreen comment from our stimuli, they may see those people as people like who have similar opinion as me, who are similar to me, who like me. So they may consider them as within their close proximal social network. So that can strengthen their perception of closed network norm. But when our participants see anti-sunscreen comment, they may see those people as online strangers. There are people who have different opinions from me. I do not feel identified with them. And their comments only change our participants' perception of general social media users' norm, but didn't translate to the perception of more proximal norms. And also, as we mentioned, across the two conditions, we found that the norms of our proximal network are a more powerful driver of our attitudes than the norms of a distant online crowd. All right, so some implications from our study. So the findings from this study tells us that selective exposure to online comments really exists. And we must study that to really understand the impact of online comments on our attitudes. And also the different patterns shows us that the multiple motivations of selective exposure may coexist at the same time. And also methodologically, our study tells us, okay, self-report may be a very poor proxy for visual attention measure. It cannot capture objective attention. And eye tracking, this methodology is very important to really understand the visual attention. And then also practically, if we want to incorporate like comment moderation as a strategy in health campaign, then we probably want to highlight comments from relatable peers so people can identify with them and their comments can activate the potent proximal norms. Okay, and then the final take-home message is that when we talk about the impact of online comments on our attitudes, it's not just whether the comments is supportive of an issue or against an issue. It's more importantly is our attention, whether we even look at that. And also who we think is behind the comments, who are the commenters that determine its persuasive power. And the online comments are most impactful when we really pay attention to that and when it is from people that we identify with. Okay. Well, thank you for your attention.